Hello, fellow YouTubers, people who may be viewing this from outside the platform. There is a means to call what we could call the hyper evidential that can be used to discern how investigations and lawsuits against presidents and leaders, the equivalents of other individual leaders, they were multi and are multi-front collusions with keeping individuals from free speech and keeping them styles, needs, and natures needing to pretend other, and like with their motivations uh, for defenses of themselves as the natures they are. For example, with uses of liberal or with the difference between liberal or Republican. See, the individual leaders are forced to entertain locations, areas, and states where that's one of the things that they use as collusions too. With people, oh, I don't even like that person. In other words, as collusions, the difference of it is was and is being used, where and how. Predicate acts with facts roles are manifest. And as styles that can't defend that and afford properly discerned with the value of the Constitution unabridged is. And they can't afford properly discerned how the communications of America's founders were distinct from their what they said. And they can't afford to have discerned quality aspects in nature that are contained within the nature of debate that have been used to offensively sense anyone with short words with convictions proper, even if it's a majority of people, even if it is everyone. And this preaching method knew that any grouping of countries that would form while still as locations, areas, and states, blaming its original abridgments and what it caused and keeps other things, others ourselves. It could just as easily torture, extort, enslave, and make fake say self-body roles with that. Per remote use is used remotely, criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influence. Styles of fact cheating nature, styles of logic, and or logic nature. So, in other words, the interagencies are making confessions when they pretend they have integrity and when they jumping into other people's conversations to defend blindly titles and people they don't even know, like former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. His roles with people from Weathersfield since I was a kid, planting evidence is planting predicate acts with facts, method / S roles at the campuses and at other locations. And consciously, knowingly, roles, this is with a whole bunch of different countries shared here. And criminal enterprises at the same time, private ones, specifically for the styles and needs and natures to be used remotely. Speaking about jobs, for example, leaving out what our founders communicated to us to understand about the nature of jobs and how the difference of their roles with that torture, extortion, slavery method was also used by the breaching method to measure and maintain other things, others or itself, communicated where the breaching method is a scientific value, inseparable from scientific syntax and nature, of awareness. But we have that replaced on a mass scale. Harvard Hospital recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have rules planting evidences with people from Weathersfield into Branch, and their rules with names next to college campuses of all ages and natures intercities, including people that live next to Harvard Hospital, named Mayano and Demorrow, like a Demorrow's Market used to be there. They're still involved with that location, and Iowa's Kitchen, and the other thing. I believe it's other businesses too. I don't know. They have roles with mayors and foreign and domestic medical families, attaching little kids to fake look. I never know how I never had a class with a formal class with Joe DeMoro or Joe Aiello or John Mayan. They're involved with wire crimes of people on my street and tied to them throughout town, involved with the Wethersfield Police, Newington Police, Rocky Hill Police, New Britain Police, and police forms, state police. Whiting Forensics has them roles with Joshua Julian. He just Mr. Kowal, the father, keeps trying to communicate with me. And in other words, they're planting evidences with investigators and judges involved. All sides of criminal and civil cases, they already had collusions with, including their roles with police that make confessions at my house, and they're refusing to identify themselves properly and switching names and roles of falsified police reports, wire crimes where the police forms fabricate the whole wire conversations, hold digital evidences. Whiting Forensics also forced a principal child abuser digitally, involved with also more with the courts and people on the state corrections and judicial offices with sexual, medical, and identity themed, like Black KKK, Confederate flag themed military, and roles interstates, criminally foreign influence between the campuses of each age and nature. People from my grammar school were affected to make a confession to me, to make it look like we had a conversation when there was none, from another classroom. When they make an exception, you go for 1 second and they pull that off because that's what they do. And there have been confessions tied to that since. And they're pretending all these people will tell you this, except for the ones that are interbranch, and they'll tell you too, but you have to ask them right. A whole bunch of people in the Britain Superior Court, Hartford courts, and Connecticut's District Court have rules with a whole bunch of names of predicate acts on my street and other locations who planted evidence. I figured out what they were doing. With corners too, they don't even understand the extent of it. Even the witness protection program's involvements. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants are involved with a whole bunch of people next to Fox Connecticut News and next to WTNH and next to WFSB, who have also been planting evidences at corners of streets. There's a Mr. Gilmore, a Dr. Gilmore, who pretended he had a conversation with me at Hartford Hospital. I don't even know what he looks like. I never had a conversation with him. And I had a conversation with Christina Sioko. That's his boss. He pretended through the mail he had a conversation with me. And she was afraid to respond properly to what I asked her for help with. And she asked me ridiculous, IQ test questions. Also tactically delusions wrought. They have replaced what James Madison communicated and our founders communicated. We're supposed to explain them as those behind James Madison, his plan. And that's what George Washington agreed to help and to use his plan. There was no means for freedom because the difference between the laws entrenched, the crazy criminal enterprises overt, all these crazy nations together with those laws further. And in other words, and the breaching methods use of the differences of that and rolls with it. So it could increasingly, it's recorded where and how other things are others ourselves, besides the breaching method that our founders communicated for us to understand about and to blame for things like slavery. Other things, others ourselves, including our founders, are blamed for it. Our founders' communications were changed. Pace. Please spread the word. Please share this YouTube video. It is worth it. Please have Judge Napolitano's Judging Freedom and Fox News and or CNN and or MSNBC respond for the sources. I'm also not saying that they're related even. A Heather Hansen and a Joe DeMoro. But if they had a kid together, it would look just like an Aaron Mate on Judge Napolitano's Judging Freedom YouTube channel. And on a Param pill. And these are also people with the former director of FBI's co-defendants and their neighbors involved with predicate acts with facts and identity thefts and frauds with people that didn't even have the same classes together. And all exceptions were forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded, not even realizing, attached to roles with all sides of criminal and civil cases, depositions, the people's homes, the court's homes, planting the same sequence shifts, and in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center in that context, right before it. Same ones leading up to it with extended family members involved with the ones with the name Kalala, planting digital evidences and wire crimes of Wethersfield Police and State Police and forensics names, including digital evidences with a principal upskirt nature, involved with them with the Facebook page of the school that forced it, with a Joshua Julian and people tied to him and his neighbors. Also a Mark Violet involved with a whole bunch of people at UConn, with judges and prosecutors, all kinds of medical corruption, tactically delusions raw too. They're putting whole fake transcripts in databases, and with the people next to the schools, intercities tied to these people next to the Hartford Hospital involved. How are you? So the world, Scott Ritter was on the YouTube channel of Judge Napolitano the other day, so the world almost came to an end the other day. We were told in the 80s that Russia and America were going to have to come to they can't come to an agreement. Not just an agreement. We have to come to an agreement that's also positive to nature. People can't even explain what the world wars were about, because one of the things they were about more than anything else was the breaching method that was entrenched before any modern country founders were even born. American history is taught other than that. They're communicating other for that, about that, than our founders and Madison communicated, and George Washington really communicated about that. That's why Tucker Carlson, not even realizing to an extent, cut off and pretended and or couldn't understand why Vladimir Putin was bringing up his history the way he was. All he's trying to say was there's a breaching method entrenched. Not one modern country, in other words, there was slavery entrenched in northern colonies and southern colonies. And that breaching method made it only allowed roles with it as states. Otherwise, you were going to be censed. You were roles with that counter as the American Revolution, as the Declaration of Independence, and as the value of the Constitution unabridged, which it is still forbid natures of questions and of questioning and or of answers that are true always, not denying the slightest exception. Because, in other words, the sciences are abridged, individually grouped in together. And there are readings of statutes that the breaching method already showed roles on names on all sides of criminal and civil cases tied to them, their lawyers, the formal court's names, the police forms involved, their sources, including databases. Since before computers, the databases were a criminal reengineering of the republic for which we stand and its campuses system, which is reliant upon the algorithm of the hyper-simultaneous, that which shows us. It revealed sharks with two eyes, for example, as a distinct species from our own, but also non-distinct from our own. And we didn't invent that, and the sharks didn't invent that. So, in other words, well, thank you for listening. So, in other words, even the presidents, they force them in courts. They're going to make subject treatments and go back and forth with time treatments too. And there's, in other words, precedents and statutes never stop being used as criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, readings of precedents and statutes and of reality. But the cause of that is relative to how their campus is. Every campus of every age and nature at countries A through Z, even the exceptions, because this keeps people of all ages and natures entertaining other communicators for what nature communicates about and for. While as more so than we are at each age, the value of that age. In other words, it reverses the strengths and the simultaneous weakness that little kids have simultaneously, keeping opposite, same thing as middle age and as elderly. We have means like that to agree. Our nature agrees to already anyway, to better than free. Way better. Space means out of nowhere. In other words, for elderly and veterans homes. Not because they fought for the country, because they follow orders and had other people think for them. And that failed. And there's needs to speak that because those are evidences and demonstration of the Constitution's abridgments. We had other communicators for what really caused the Civil War, let alone the World Wars. We had not possession of our name /S. And this breaching method, again, it knew since before modern religious messengers were born. Names A through Z would entertain uses of the sciences names A through Z, tactical ulterior, from how nature wants and needs them used, us to explain things. In other words, nature wants us not to leave out how we have black people as whites of eyes, where it asks us to question what caused slavery. Where in the books, those colors were used criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, / hypercriminally foreign influence by the syntax natures, names A through Z formally. Now, the difference between that, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, the prisons tied to them needing to hide library because they're all one unit. In other words, there's natures of unity, there are natures of independence that are increasingly used tactical ulterior from how nature communicates about this. We are independent species body of individual bodies, of individuals. We are unity as a species body of individual bodies, united that way, simultaneously. Everything's in demonstration of this identity of simultaneous / hyper-simultaneous nature. Theories are used with the sciences A through Z, including the law. I'm not a lawyer. See, they entertain subject treatments, leaving out exceptions in exception nature and valuing them being and having been made up into every database too, tied to behavior, racketeering, worsening war crimes, as it is actually recorded regarding black pupils, whites of eyes, in the replacement of this. See, this breaching method knew that nature itself would demonstrate there's a hyperforeign identity of breaching method involved with the syntax and the nature of relations between countries A through Z individually grouped and together. But the only people allowed to be involved with that or any other thing were already used to measure and maintain collusion /S against anyone who tried to speak for the hypernative revelations that each age was capable of discerning. For example, we were shown enough, even though they were placed where our founders communicated for us to communicate and understand about American history. We were shown enough to be able to discern there was a breaching method sickly against Native Americans, sickly against colonists, and sickly against the people of the United States. And it forced them to entertain and envision, to have small vision. All exceptions in exception nature that appear to be in demonstration of other are in demonstration of the same thing /S. So all natures of wealth, too, we wouldn't have debates about natures of wealth, leaving out how the breaching method had employments and uses of that to sense and discern who's going to be state collusions as a bridge fact treat nature styles, quality aspects of nature, fact treat, so they can't defend the Constitution, but they need to pretend other. This breaching method back to each age of fact treat nature, trying to be polite and respect elders, things like that, or disrespecting the difference between we have to be led by the hyper invisible but still discernible. And this shows that each age of fact treat nature was shown that and how, like, they would have to hurt and speak bad about people, good people, including good people that would speak bad about them as bad people. This preaching method employed every good person to roles, keeping other things, others ourselves, as styles and natures, pretending not to realize the value of how we have Black people's rights and lives. And simultaneously, this was left out from our most critical questions, like about slavery, like about the nature of debate and how they get away with the nature of debate, nature of logic, relying upon those very subject treatments abridged because of roles with all sides of cases. Like, in other words, people are making and holding, forcing case names to mean what they don't, rather than the principles of the law properly and unabridged. So, in other words, the shootings at school concentrated towards schools and concentrated like with malls and things like that, not just because for the obvious reasons, because there's more people masked, they want to do damage, and the presidents plural. But it's concentrated now with the schools and with the shootings on Trump. And I believe I believe, I don't know if I saw in the titles of YouTube that Kamala Harris was shot at. I didn't even have time to research this yet. In other words, people don't have time because while everyone's pretending that anyone had research that was legitimate, you guys are preventing, formally, our formal identities of the law have collusions with people that jump into other people's conversations relative to where and to how all sides of criminal and civil cases and the courts and the difference between them, the people on off the state corrections office, state judicial branch officers of Connecticut, but these are people involved with Washington, D.C., increasingly directly and indirectly with two speech class teachers I had in high school, who also had roles with influencing teachers I had from behind my back and from behind in ways they don't even understand the extent of. They're attaching everyone to fake and changed communications with others. There's a Michael Emmett who's recorded involved with predicate acts with kids and with judges and prosecutors and whiting forensics, involved with intelligence, foreign and domestic, since they were kids, criminally foreign influence, your roles with uses of their difference. They don't have legitimate differences with Korea. They don't have with the families associated with Korea involved. With at the same time with Russians, Ukrainians, the same families. Roles with difference bracket, time roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, including they're not legitimately with the army, involved with some KKK, Confederate flag themed and black themed and Latino themed, involved with falsified police reports and wire crimes, with the Wethersfield police and with the houses near me, involved also as the ones with the police phones since they were kids, with their families, involved with multiple police departments with wire crime acts and methods, relative to the roles with names stacked, acting tied to stacked and faked conversations into databases, little magic tricks. Then they go ahead and take oaths anyway. This breaching method knew how to propagate self-valued, self-cultivated. A bunch of fakes pretending other. These are people also next to Fox Connecticut News and next to WFSB and next to WTNH. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have been planting evidences at and next to crime scenes and their influence to pretend other and they get away with it by forcing people to speak through others who are indifferent to just attaching people to fake and changed communications. WFSB put fake conversations with me about the World Trade Center attack. They have judges and prosecutors involved with people with child abusers increasingly, where they have roles forcing them before they were caught, because these are sick people with probate courts. There are, I believe, multiple probate court judges tied to the same house, involved with a whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital, involved with medical, sexual, wire crime, mail crimes. They have lawyers, little games to make it look like they have conversations with people and with the doctors, forging names, switching names of other doctors, little fake tricks with instruments where they use truths for lies. And time used criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, and all truths used for lies regarding their motivations, because they are also screening how the whole bunch of different countries. In other words, they're confessing this too with denials. They're refusing to identify themselves. And they make vertical and horizontal confessions. There are proofs that one of Judge Napolitano's sources, O'Leary, I believe Larry Johnson, might be trying to change what I said regarding vertical and horizontal. I've been saying this for years, and they've been changing what I say and the value of it on social media. Wethersfield police have their Facebook page, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with the Joshua Schumack with the intelligence community, foreign and domestic, involved also with religious spots, with child offenders, including all sides of a church associated with Robert Rodriguez, who's brought one of the people who brought the principal child defenders campus to me. Also, there were intercities roles with predicate acts at Trinity College with the people with the Wethersfield campuses involved with predicate acts, and confessions with the names next to it all the time. They bring up a whole bunch of subjects and then they pretend they can't understand people. These are the same people, all sides of criminal and civil cases. Also recorded with time collusion with overt criminal enterprises as little. No wonder they're little rats, and they're calling other people rats, and they're putting themselves into other people's business. Even about the World Trade Center attack, you should get me off the fake conversations with yourself, WFSB, and your collusions with the police and courts, refusing to identify themselves properly, and get them on paper too, because they have more Facebook involvements with federal crimes with the kids, and they're ducking behind how some of the parents were and are criminally involved, including, regardless, there's no O'Neill involved. There are foreign and domestic, even governors and senators involved. There's a Joseph Lieberman increasingly involved with people on Uptown Line Drive, planting evidences that they're tied to their roles with predicate acts at campuses, fake conversations with me, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me as people from other classes, and with the people that were in my classes involved with these narratives that are fake in the databases, and preventing the means to discern it. The same people are pretending I'm not telling the truth about it. That's why you need to get them on paper, one name and sequence, please, Americans. I'm not the only one. They changed other people's communications that were in the World Trade Center attack right before the attack, in that context in Manhattan. The same ones have been intercities and interstates and international names involved with this, all along Route 3, Route 175, and conjunctions to it. People with the name Scalora and DeMauro involved with the names with the Wethersfield police, and with the houses around me and around themselves. And because they have other police forms involved too, in courts, planting evidences with them. They want to have descriptions of instances, leaving out what's actually recorded and what came first. So get them on paper. You guys are involved with violence too, the ones I don't know the names of, tied to the Smith, involved with his doctors and people. A whole bunch of doctors are involved with people from other areas that planted evidence on my street since I was a kid. Fear God. Same ones personally involved with, and not just professionally, criminally involved with judges and prosecutors, overt criminal enterprises, private ones at the same time, and the same house involved /S involved with wire crimes with them. These are police phones, families, and note the date of 9/11, because that's the date their extended families were members, were also people tied to them, and victims. There were roles with predicate acts at the World Trade Center interstates and internationally leveraged at the spots next to it with the Scalora, etc., and at the Ninth Circuit Court with names on all sides of that involved, and the news at the same time, and the court itself post dated documents from inside the Ninth Circuit. That was proven after the World Trade Center attack. Those same ones are involved next to Fox Connecticut News, increasingly with names involved planting evidences and behavior crimes, pretending passions and emotions. There are neighbors of a Sal Saviello who increasingly have roles with. I never had a conversation with Sal Saviello personally in my life. He tried to make one exception with a Eric Jensen involved with state police with them. And as the people along Town Line driving, Two Route Highway and Hang Dog Lane and their conjunctions, like the Berlin Turnpike, involved with state police, interstates through time, and people involved with body dumping spots with them, and other natures of child abusers. So the state police, in other words, first forced it. So this took complete a breaching method. Like, in other words, there were people that used the colonists remotely from abroad. Then they made them all be roles with slavery. In other words, and they were all enslaved at the same time. But those laws made it worse if they would argue against it, if they wouldn't stay collusions with it. Otherwise, they'd be sensed through their own, because this employed all to roles with that. So they have, we have not had legal representation. All exceptions and exception nature show that all legal representation we had, it was per a method, effectively measured and maintained criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrong. But this is also a predicate acts with facts method. Like, as we could discern where and how, in other words, if you change what black and white means, and you're going to hurt people, everyone with that, say you're going to hurt everyone with that. But say, and then you're going to hurt people sickly, distinctly too. That's also evidences. And we can discern this instantly, excuse me. But we have not had this addressed, because right where we have other things other than ourselves, blamed for things our founders communicated for us to blame on the breaching method. Our founders communicated for us to understand how they were tortured, extorted, and enslaved by the difference of those laws. It was the difference between, sometimes ways it was only because of those laws, but simultaneously it was the overt criminal enterprises. Simultaneously, other ways it was the private ones. Simultaneously, other ways it was all the communications locations and news locations planting roles with sequence shifts, with value treatments that couldn't defend themselves and afford the quality of fact treatment nature necessary to be our formal speech, and or informal, because at all locations is where this is perpetrated. At all location of every name of every country, the locations, areas, and states were already collusions with suits and ties, counters, and exceptions. Already spoke and defended what they can't defend and afford to be, let alone to protract short words with convictions proper. So courts that put little kids in prisons and adults, before they did that, in other words, those prisons and their roles with them, and the difference between that and themselves, their names next to and at the state judicial branch offices, the state corrections offices. Those are people. Those are identities of practical reason that are used remotely as criminal insidiousness natures of practical reason, to use Immanuel Kant's phrase. And the difference between that or as a nature used, like they'll just jump in and change what people say and fake it with readings of statutes that show this. There was retired Wethersfield police chiefs recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have roles with lawyers, with criminally foreign influence readings of statutes, with their own personal and professional. There's a Bayer who's one of the ones involved, intercities with Weathersfield Police Chief Cintron, recorded involved with a whole bunch of people at the corner of Elm Street and Route 3 in Weathersfield and in Rocky Hill. And since before Mazzucato Bakery was there, Mazzucato Bakery is reportedly and involved with as the family member as a former police chief Cintron, and they have roles of predicate acts with the same house who have roles with the people intimately tied to at least one former police chief, and that's the people involved with wire crimes and ongoing communications with me because they're trying to look for something bad or good, because they're involved with descriptions of instances criminally foreign influence with the courts, names on off the state corrections offices, state judicial branch offices. These are also names that have been planting evidences with the intelligence community and courts, family members with the same names and ones tied to them near me, involved with the wire crimes since they were kids, with their families members and with other families tied to them in the intelligence community. Multiple police departments have connections. So it's important to get them on paper because they have people involved. When you're going to see a whole bunch of people, they put fake things. They also pretend I had conversations with doctors associated with them personally and professionally, criminally foreign influence. They pretend I say everyone's evil in the fake conversations I had with me. They pretended this through the mail too, and they're hiding this from Judge Napolitano. They should not have. See, they're valuing the streams of people going to courts every day as an excuse, pretending they're incapable of speaking for justice. Okay, thank you, people. Please let Judge Napolitano know, and please have the agencies stop pretending they think they're credible. They need to be they have credibility, because that nature of debate is them trying to pretend that is worthy. In other words, they're leaving out exception nature and what's actually demonstrated as collusions. In other words, there are means to discern this. So, but they're hiding this from Judge Napolitano. They have remote uses of judges' Facebook pages. Fox Connecticut News is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed collusions with a whole bunch of people tied to former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants and their family members who have predicate acts with spots next to Fox Connecticut News, which is also next to the state capitol. And their roles with a whole bunch of different natures of organized crime and crime scenes, criminally foreign influence, and pretending to know me behind my back as people I didn't have classes with, who are also involved with uses of that word class, where they have black KKK, Confederate flag themed people involved with this Joshua Julian and a Mark Violet and Hartford Hospital with the names next to the hospital too, including watch the Los Solitos video about and their roles next to Hartford Hospital's Institute of Living. They have other criminal enterprises too involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders with them, and sequence shifts planting with them, and with the news at the same time. It's important, in other words. And as the ones involved with the Weathersfield Police Department families, what is the Smith family doing with the Afghan leaders and kids? And what are they doing with the military? And with this Kalol family playing games in my backyard further after the gun thing, right before the, and they whistled. What's a whistle? Why can't he mind his business? Why he's got to play games? Get him on paper with the other police departments too. You want to play that game? We'll do it that way. But you guys have been making vertical and horizontal confessions, so don't pretend you haven't. In other words, not you guys. In other words, WFSB attached me, Channel 3 in Connecticut, they attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others about the World Trade Center attack, too, when I caught them forcing medical and sexual offenders of kids, including with judges and prosecutors' families involved with the same house, with extended family members involved, and more World Trade Center and spots next to it roles, also with all sides in criminal and civil cases, and the court's name speaking fake things and delusions into records. And all these names they bring up with this. Well, so I'm gonna read the things they sent, the fake conversations they put through the mail. And they should, Harvard Hospital has lawyers too, involve all kinds of people at Harvard Hospital involved with the name Kalal and tied to the name Kalal, involved with prosecutors and judges and their family members and people tied to them with predicate acts in my streets. And they're ones with the teachers tied to them. They're speaking fake things behind people's backs into records. Great God. Thank you.